Sameoldji asked for new GM paradigms, or at least discussion around how to return the idea or the concept, the function of the GM to one based in a shared sense of responsibility from what in some types of role-playing is a solo position of authority. Now, how this came about, well, I mean, that's the history of gaming. How did the GM become an authority? Eventually, in some of the early games, the game master was described as an authority, and it was done for a very particular reason. It's not about personality types. It's not about control freaks, or it's not even really about the fact that many early role players were also wargamers, and they had pre-existing biases about how groups would interact with the rules. It's not really about any of that stuff. It's about being able to focus on what they thought was important, a particular style of play that they were going for, something that they couldn't get elsewhere, and that's key. So what kind of game you are heading for has to be talked about long before you figure out what role everybody's going to play in creating it. Some types of games, some types of story environment inside the game, some types of game content require a game master or referee figure more than others. For example, exploring a dungeon or negotiating a peace treaty or making first contact with an alien species or solving a murder mystery, all of these things will be very different depending on how they're played out. If they're played out in a shared collaborative environment, in the extreme sense of that word, they will be very different, and the capability for surprise and gradual discovery will be very different from one where there's a game master who has things planned out in one way, whether that be a planned story or a planned environment. The experience of these games played in these two different ways will definitely not be the same, and the goals for play would be completely different. Coming up with one paradigm for game mastery, I'm not sure that it's entirely possible. Being aware that the game master has a responsibility instead of authority is a good place to start. Sitting down with a statement of purpose. Let's play an investigative game where we solve mysteries. And then taking the next step and saying we want to be able to collaborate in that because we want to focus on the style of the story. We want to focus on the motif rather than a game where there are clues that we'll uncover and we'll have to put them together. When I first started out role-playing, everybody was a game master and everybody was a player, and we would rotate these duties. Sometimes it depended on who had purchased a new adventure and so wanted to run people through it, and sometimes it depended simply on who had an idea. We were alternating monthly on a schedule, and I've used that technique a lot over the years because there have always been many game masters in my group. That's what I like to encourage, sharing the responsibility rather than your group having one game master who runs all the games all the time and everyone else a player. I don't understand this, and I really don't support it. So part of my new paradigm of GMing would be that everybody does it. And once you've been behind the screen and once you've been the one to introduce a new game, and once you've been the one to introduce a new style of play or a new technique to play, and this keeps going around the table, it's certainly a lot easier to buy into what the next GM is trying to do, and it's certainly a lot easier to help them do it and share the responsibility of the workload. Because here's the thing: when you are responsible for something, basically what we're saying is it's your fault if it goes awry. You're responsible for creating a story for people to go through if you're playing that way. Then if the story doesn't work, it was your fault because you were responsible for it. And responsibility will always lead to authority in that kind of environment. We become owners of the things for which we are responsible. We take charge in order to make sure that they happen the way that they're supposed to be, rather than just saying, "Oh, come on, you guys, let's try and do it." It becomes a more forceful position until it ends up, as Sameoldji described, as being very tactical play where everything's a probably, a maybe, I might, and looking for a hint, for a breadcrumb, or for permission from the game master so that we don't lose the character. Of course, it doesn't have to be this way. If everybody's experienced with running the game, holding that responsibility, then as players, they pick up more of the slack. They're more familiar with more games. They're able to learn new games faster. They're able to recognize when a game master is introducing certain types of settings, certain types of story, certain types of NPC, and more shorthand develops in the group. Play is elevated because everybody has experience with every role. Training professionally works this way. There's no reason why we can't adapt it to how we play. Everything just gets better. But that first step has to be recognizing what type of game you're playing, what type of environment you're exploring, what you want to get out of the experience. Until that's decided, there really can't be any progress in identifying how the different roles around the table are going to work. Games where you'd like there to be a sense of mystery, in fact, a game where you're trying to solve a mystery, can certainly be done where all the players collaborate for the creation of the mystery, but it will be very different from the type of mystery that you run if there's a game master with an established sense of what that mystery is. So I'll give you an example. For me, I prefer a simulationist style of play, meaning I want to discover and interact with an environment that someone knows about, that the game master has developed. Now, it may not all be worked out down to shoelace styles and the small print on the back page of a prayer book in a temple in a small town. I'm not talking about that, but what I mean is I'm interested in taking on a role and exploring that character through making decisions. I'm interested in exploring a world where actions have consequences. And it's not me as the player spending points or triggering aspects of the character to create what those consequences are so that I can become more powerful later at the right time. That's not what I'm in it for. I'm interested in making a decision and surviving the consequences, or benefiting from the consequences, or navigating and negotiating the consequences, the results of actions, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Me coming up with those consequences, why am I doing the game master's job? But in no case do I want to be playing in a game where I need to ask permission to act, or would I want players who, unless they were learning the game and didn't understand how the rules work yet, were asking me questions about, can I, should I? What does your character think? That's my reaction to that kind of environment. I don't prefer to play that way. So my paradigm for a game master is one who takes responsibilities for all the non-player character elements. Not everybody enjoys that. Some people are more focused not on character, not on the decisions of the characters and the results of those decisions, but on the feel of a particular genre or the shape of a particular type of story, and that's where they go. And that's more open or more applicable for broader collaborative design powers among all the people sitting at the table. That's just not the way that I go. So to come around to some kind of answer, finally, I feel that in order to establish a paradigm, to establish the way that game mastering works for your group, is to first assess what game it is you're playing this time with these people and what the goal of that game is. Simple fun, solving a mystery, like unraveling the clues of a mystery, discovering a new area, creating a story, exploring a genre, feeling like heroes. What are you trying to do? And then define what roles are necessary to make that goal happen. Accepting the fact that for some types of story, more authority, more responsibility will fall on certain shoulders in order to create that. That might be more responsibility from the players, and it might be more responsibility from the game master.